So it seems, folks, like we've reached a tipping point, because there's now basically nothing to separate me from the run-of-the-mill shill, the person that just doesn't have principles and just goes wherever the wind blows. You know, the tail that wags the dog. That's what these people are in this place. They are just bending with the wind. Now that the whole of Total War's fanbase has turned on CA, the shills are in a bit of a predicament. They are between the proverbial rock and hard place, because if they keep doing the status quo of shilling for these games, you know, putting videos up on queue with pre-order links while trying to hype up this stuff and make it out to be all happy and fluffy and everything's alright, if they do that, they are just risking pissing off their audiences at this point. So they can't do that. But if they can't do that, how do they continue? What do they do instead? If they make videos shitting on things, if they take away the pre-order links, because it's a bit ridiculous to have a pre-order link for a piece of shit that is being marketed with unethical business practices. If they take away the pre-order link, if they point out the DLC is an overpriced pile of wank, if they piss off the developers, then that's it. What happens to them at that point? CA cuts ties with them. No, they would never do that. They would never cut ties with you, for being honest and being critical. Your audience starts to become a bit infighty, so people start turning on each other in your comment sections. You no longer have a pointless circle jerk of a channel that's just an extension of CA's marketing department, and the grift is up. So what do? You panic, and you come up with something like this. Why I haven't covered Shadows of Change. 15 minutes long, 58,000 views. Why I haven't covered Shadows of Change. And then if we go back past this video of Warhammer 40k, we have Total War Warhammer 3 Shadows of Change DLC. Yuan Bo, that's one of those Shadows of Change words. New Kislev units, how can it be new if it's not Shadows of Change? Because that's the new thing. So we're marketing new units in the new thing, so there it is there as well. And then he's playing Hunt Showdown. That's his passion game when he's actually having fun. And then back to this Yuan Bo thing. Shadows of Change DLC, it says it right there. And then we have an acknowledgement of greedflation and the controversy. And that performed well, 100,000 views almost. And then we have more Shadows of Change DLC campaign mechanics. Shadows of Change again. My god, that's only going back 3 weeks. Holy shit, this is a hell of a milking. Another one. So we've got, at the very least, 1, 2, 3, we won't count that one. Tentatively be nice. 4, 5, 6, 7 videos, and then he says he hasn't covered it. Okay. I honestly don't know how he reconciles that. We will figure out what he means by why I haven't covered it. We'll figure out. And then he starts covering it. See, when someone makes a video that says why I haven't done something, you expect them to not have done it, and then maybe even to not do it. It's like, I've got a principle that I've stood by, and I'm going to continue to stand by it. But in this case, there wasn't a principle, and I'm not going to stand by it at all. Oh my god. Yeah. So just so you know what we're talking about here, to give a reminder, this is what we've been dealing with for the past decade. Total War is kept afloat in 2021 by a fleet of shills supporting an overextended marketing budget, tasked to stretch the achievements of underfunded studios making games that reliably fall short of offerings from their predecessors from over a decade ago. Alright, let's listen to this.
Play it, and of course I'm hyped for it, even though Warhammer has never really been my thing. I genuinely enjoyed this event. I would have loved to have done it on an actual event, like being at a place, just so that connection, etc., wouldn't have been an issue. But other than that, I really enjoyed this. This was obviously probably a normal difficulty or something, and I genuinely had a really fun time, which is why I played it multiple times, because I went into it planning on playing it once, maybe twice, but I ended up playing it like 4 times. I could have played it even more, actually, but I had stuff to do on the same day. Anyway, so what I'm thinking currently is because
I love how these comments age. Like, see when people try and contradict me or be incredulous and say, oh, Volound, maybe you're being uncharitable, maybe you've got this wrong, maybe you're missing something, and then you fast forward by a year and look at how badly aged. Yeah, man.
As I enjoyed this as much as I did, I was always going to do Let's Plays on Warhammer. I just wasn't really planning on doing many of them.
I wonder
love
why.
the spell, by the way, this like cone. I love the cone spells on Warhammer always.
This. Okay, so that was in May of 2021. It's now 2023, and we realise that he quite clearly did not genuinely enjoy Warhammer 3. He never gave a shit about Warhammer 3. Even the people that like Warhammer fucking hate Warhammer 3 and say Warhammer 2 is better. That's the consensus at this point. The consensus is Warhammer 2 is better than Warhammer 3. Warhammer 3 is a buggy, inferior cash grab that's just a DLC pipeline. And then if we look at this, what was I saying in November 2021, a few months before Warhammer 3 launched? Warhammer 3 is a $60 DLC pipeline, and its improvement all fits on a 2-page blog post. So that's the nature of the situation. That's probably the most flagrant example of shilling. So everyone falls between somewhere over here where I am and somewhere over there where that is. That guy has just fucking ignored Warhammer 3. I don't think that guy even played Warhammer 3 after it launched, so he joined in with that. I wonder why he did that. Was he paid? If he wasn't paid, then he did it for free, which is grovelling. He did it for free, by the way. Okay, let's get into this now. Why I haven't covered Shadows of Change. I can't wait to hear this.
Tumultuous month or so. It's been a bit of a tumultuous month or so, hasn't it?
Yep.
A lot going on, a lot of pushback, a lot of angry voices when it comes to this new direction for Total War. And while I have rarely, if ever, seen the community this united when it comes to a major DLC announcement for the Warhammer series, Shadows of...
That's him acknowledging that there is a massive backlash that is united against Creative Assembly, and now he's stuck in the middle. That's what that was, that's important.
Change and Warhammer 3 are currently sitting at numbers 8 and 9 respectively on the global Steam bestsellers list, which means that people are still buying it, which is their prerogative. As always,
they're not buying it very much though. It would have been much higher. There are charts that show that this DLC is performing atrociously compared to previous ones. It's barely a blip. This is extremely underperforming.
Always do what you want with your own money, especially when it comes to entertainment.
Especially when it's extremely unethical, then you shouldn't. You shouldn't buy things that cause suffering or cause extreme harm, you know. And this is setting the tone for the rest of the video. He's going to give you permission to do something, so he wants you to give him permission to do something. Do your best to be grateful for this extremely wide berth that has just been graciously extended to you. Remember it.
I mean, if you're like financing the trafficking of immigrants or investing in bioweapons designed to wipe out humanity, then stop that. But otherwise, you earn your cash, use it when you need it, like JG Wentworth. Hashtag not sponsored. And what I think that demonstrates more than anything, really, is that Reddit and YouTube communities are not necessarily reflective of the entire player base, which should be fairly obvious. This is not going to be a financial disaster for CA.
So now he is playing down what he already acknowledged was an overwhelming unification of the fan base. He's now trying to say you are a subset of a larger group.
Okay? Even with reviews sitting at very negative, even with all the backlash and outcry and plans to boycott. With that said, the court of public opinion does matter, our voices do make an impact, and our feedback has shaped this series significantly more than a few loud detractors would like to give credit for. Frankly, a lot more than you get.
What loud detractors? I've not seen any of these. You better not be talking about me, because I've already taken credit for the things that I've done, like getting the difficulty modifiers to fuck. I'm happy to take credit for that and point out that people can make differences whenever they are smart and compelling, and of course have enough influence.
You guys could even know. Creators and the community at large have drastically changed the trajectory of the series, mostly for the better. While some of the uproars we've experienced over the years were embarrassing, misguided, and occasionally just flat out wrong, this was not one of those times. So you might be wondering why I have not covered Shadows of Change much over the last several weeks.
So he says he hasn't covered it here in the title, and then he says much, and then when you look at his channel, there's like half a dozen videos, which is a lot to get out of this. It's just a shitty DLC for a game that we've already had 3 times. This is the 3rd time they've sold this game. This is the 20th fucking DLC. 7 videos for a DLC of which there's like 20. What kind of coverage is normal then? Do we need to cover each DLC 10 times? 20 times? 20 DLCs covered 20 times? Holy shit.
Why I haven't really been uploading much of anything, and the answer is pretty simple. I didn't want to. I've been sitting on some really good battles and really good ideas for content that I kind of just flat out refuse to make, not because I'm participating in some boycott or because I wanted to make some grandiose statement and stick it to the man in solidarity with the community.
I don't think he really cares about sticking anything to the man. He admits later that this is his job. That's his sole incentive to make money out of this. And of course, he was shilling pre-order links for Warhammer. I made a Reddit thread 2 years ago, in May of 2021, where I asked people to point out YouTubers that have pre-order links, and people supplied examples. So we have a list here of people that have engaged in pre-order links. I've never done this, I would never do this. Encouraging people to pre-order is a scummy thing to do. It's completely scabby and shitty. There's no reason to pre-order games, and there's no reason to buy games before like 6 months after launch or a year after launch at this point in 2023. Just look at fucking Starfield. People bought that even 2 days after launch, thinking it was the next Morrowind or the next Skyrim. That was how opaque the fog around that game was. People couldn't even discern that it was not a successor to Skyrim or Morrowind. So there's no reason to buy games until at least like a year after launch at this point. There's just none. You should never do it. Any YouTuber that tells you otherwise is not your friend and doesn't give a shit about you and doesn't have any of your interests in mind. They're just trying to exploit you. You're just there to serve an immediate purpose for them. They are literally exploiting you for your money. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you right now, do not pre-order ever, ever. Even the incentives that look good, they're not. It's not worth the risk, especially with game industry and the state it's in. Never do it, simple as. If they've put pre-order links on their videos, don't trust them. If they've actually tried to get you to pre-order stuff and try to defend pre-ordering, you should boycott them. Talking about boycotts, boycott YouTubers that want to fucking pre-order games and get people pre-order. Absolute cancer, absolute AIDS. Alright, someone gave an example here of Milking Cookies Total War does it in his video description. Reddit doesn't let me copy and paste screenshots. Alright, so let's look at this. This is in February of 2021, Warhammer 3, so that was about a year before the game actually came out, and he has pre-order links. So people were given Sega an interest-free loan for about a year, and this guy was taking commission the entire time. Next is pre-order page for Warhammer 3. He's encouraging people to pre-order. 200,000 views that has this pre-order opportunity filtered through it. Look at that. So he's been profiteering from garbage, like pre-orders, this whole time for years. I would never do that, but he does it.
Because I simply did not want to. Because I'm a bit exhausted with the drama, with the continuous cycles of poor patching, support, and communication.
It's good that you mentioned that, because the consensus is that the game is a buggy pile of shit that's inferior to Warhammer 2, so he should be complaining about the state of the game, and that should be all he does pretty much until they make it better. He should just refuse to cover the game until it's been fixed. That's ideally what he would do if he actually cared about the game and about the experience of the players. That's what I've been doing for the past decade whenever I've been around Total War. I've either been playing the good games or explaining why the shit ones are so shit, and I've been a force for good if I've been a force for anything at all. I've not tried to suck money out of this franchise zombie by landing on this corpse and laying megs on it, or vomiting acid onto it and sucking up the juices. I haven't done any of that, but that's what all of these shillfluencers exist to do if they're not being honest about the situation. And the situation has never been more clear. I've never been less required to actually encompass the situation.
Did not want to, because I'm a bit exhausted with the drama, with the continuous cycles of poor patching, support, and communication, of uneven and buggy releases, of power creep, of the fact that a year and a half...
Yep, it's good that you mentioned power creep, because guess what? That goes straight to the core of shit game design and trying to make as much money out of DLC as possible. This is what they do. This has been described to me quite a lot by people that buy this tat. Whenever they release a new DLC, they make sure all the shit in the DLC is completely overpowered compared to everything that already exists, and then 3 months later it gets patched to make it normalised, so you have to wait for the next DLC to have this power creep experience again. It's pathetic. I'm sure there's other developers that do this as well, but it's just a despicable business practice, and it's deliberate.
Into this culmination of what has been an awesome series, I still believe that the campaign right now is significantly less fun than it was at the end of Warhammer 2's life cycle, which is kind of insane.
So he's admitting there that this game as it currently exists is just inferior to Warhammer 2, which is an embarrassing admission, especially for someone that encouraged people to pre-order it. Just have to properly describe what is going on over and over again until everyone gets it.
To think about. It has been a bumpy road, and that grows wearisome over time, especially when the novelty of a series like this has long since worn off. And I think the support that it's been given simply isn't enough to keep it in a spot that's worth playing a lot. So this whole situation didn't happen in a vacuum, right? Shadows of Change getting a hefty price increase and the subsequent Rage Machine did not happen in a vacuum.
Rage Machine.
And as I've hopefully made clear, it's not about the $25. It's about what it represents. It's about getting similar amounts of content to the Twisted and Twilight with Drycha for more than double the price, then marketing it as premium DLC. It's about shrinkflation, greedflation, less product, more money. People are tired of being nickel and dime by corporations in every aspect of their lives, from housing to groceries to gas to entertainment. The 25 in and of itself is nothing to a lot of people. It's a lot to some people, and that's fair, especially with conversion rates on Steam. Some of that is insane. But if I go out to dinner with friends in America, have 2 drinks and an entree, I can spend twice that easily, tip included, and not even necessarily at a fancy restaurant. But Shadows of Change, despite being a way better DLC with way cooler mechanics, lords, and monsters than Volkmar and Helmengorst back in the day, has one of the worst price-to-content ratios I've seen since The Grim and the Grave, which is the wrong direction for the series and why I didn't really feel like playing it or covering it a whole lot.
So what he just did is essentially justify and defend this disgusting DLC model. What you're doing here is you're spending 40% of the cost on a game to expand the game by 0.5% or 1% or 2%. That is not worth it. I don't know how the fuck YouTubers can get on board with this shit without being shills. How the fuck can you endorse this? How the fuck can you justify this? You're carrying water for a shitty company that knowingly puts out overpriced shit when you're doing this. Fuck's sake.
$25 is steep, and at face value, it's already difficult to justify for some people. It has already priced some out of the trilogy entirely, especially in countries where that Steam price conversion rate is so bad. But ultimately, if the product seems worth that new price point and the quality is high, the community could be fine and grow accustomed to this new direction with $25 of DLC.
Which is pathetic. Imagine every time you find a game that you actually really like, you have to spend $500 to have it properly. To properly have the fucking game. $500. Add up the launch RRPs of every DLC so far for this, and it comes out at like $500 fucking dollars, something like that. It's ridiculous. He's justifying that right now. Fuck's sake. What happened?
It feels like it's worth it. More content for more money is reasonable. But at least for me,
Content.
Shadows of Change delivered the more money part, but not with a commensurate increase in content, and that has been my biggest problem. Well, that and general patching and support. Both are completely fixable, This is not the tolling of doom for the Total War series. I don't think this will be some huge catastrophe. It just shouldn't become the standard trend, because it will hurt the Total War brand in the long run if this keeps happening.
It's already the normal trend. This is the boil in the frog that Admiral Price described and that people like me warned about a decade ago. I've got videos from, podcast episodes I did in 2012, 2013 telling people not to buy fucking DLC. What was that DLC called for Rome 2? Beasts of Burden or something? Beasts of War? That was a fucking unit DLC that just added a few stupid units. Me and Cosmic Contrarian were going hard on Creative Assembly for that. That was an absolute pile of cash grab. Also, the Greek City States DLC on launch for Rome 2. That was another disgusting DLC that we just abhorred. Even though we fucking had to buy it to get that shit on launch and do things that we planned. It's absolutely disgusting practices. And then, by the time this happened, I'd already dipped out of Total War for like 5 years, but the Chaos Warriors DLC, on launch DLC for Warhammer 1 that they marketed the shit out of, that Angry Joe absolutely raged out about. It's obvious that this is the direction we've been going in for the past decade or something. This started with Shogun 2 and you were around for that. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. Anyone could have seen this coming. And if you have people that carry water for this company and justify them and defend them, basically brown nose them as they do this stuff, which is what I consider this to be, and we'll get into that, then it's no wonder this is happening.
Just for Warhammer, but future Total War games as well. It's not a business approach that should be cultivated, but missteps happen. Something that can hopefully be addressed in a way that benefits all parties moving forward. Because we want a game to have fun with and feel like we get our money's worth. That is the ultimate goal here. And reasonable people want those who created that content to thrive and grow and succeed as well, so they can reinvest some of that back into the series. A couple other things I want to talk about. Please stop demanding that Total War content creators boycott the Total War DLC. If you want to ask nicely and have a conversation about it, that is your right, of course. And if you're not a dick about it, that's one thing. But
so they're allowed. The sentiment is fine. You're fine with the sentiment. You don't object to that. But you just don't like when they're rude. Okay, don't be rude.
Demanding. Just coming to my channel and demanding the people whose job it is to cover Total War not make content about the new Total War product is...
They're asking you not to shill for a company to market their absolute tat in line with their schedule, their marketing schedule, to not cooperate with them and be an asset to them. They're not asking you not to cover Total War, they're asking you not to be a shill, an absolute sellout. That's what they're asking you to do, to be on their side for once, when they actually need it, when it actually matters, when it looks like they're actually getting somewhere. They're not asking you not to cover Total War. If it's your job to cover Total War, then cover Total War. Haven't you already had like 19 DLCs? Why do you have to cover this one right now? Because it's getting loads of views, because there's loads of interest? That's the problem. It shouldn't be. This should be ignored. If you are being allowed to cover this with some early access crap, and you're coordinating with their marketing department, then you're an asset that is making them money. You have allowed yourself to be appropriated as part of their marketing apparatus. That's what they're asking you not to do. You can easily just stop covering Total War in that way. I think they would be fine with it if you were to just cover some other stuff and let the marketing cycle for this just end, and then you could cover it in whatever way you wanted after that. Or maybe they want you to permanently boycott it, who knows? But I haven't even seen anyone ask you to boycott this. If you look at the comments, I doubt you'll really see anyone asking you to boycott this. Maybe there's some, but who actually gives a shit? I think what he's actually doing here is he's trying to broach what he's going to do. He's laying the groundwork for what he's going to do, which is to just cover this with impunity in whichever way he wants, and maybe even have pre-order links added back in. Who knows? Maybe we'll see pre-order links added back in. Alright, let's continue.
The people whose job it is to cover Total War not make content about the newest Total War product is silly. For a variety...
No, it's not. I was covering Total War and I just got my head down and continued with my projects that I had running because I was about actually playing good games and playing them well. There was no way I was ever going to keep covering Rome 2 after that shit launch. I covered it until it was clear the patching was never going to achieve anything, and then I dipped the fuck out. And so did you. We dipped out at around the same time, mostly. I think you stuck around and kept doing stuff. But I remember you made some videos about Dishonored, which is what I made videos of as well. And by the way, see when I dipped out of Total War in 2013 after Rome 2 or 2014, my channel size tripled in about 2 or 3 years. That was when I had the most rapid period of growth immediately after dropping Total War. That was when I started putting the most time into my channel and getting the most out of it, when I was no longer covering Total War, because the fact is, it's been a decade since Total War actually put out anything worth covering, an actually good game that I could get to grips with and do stuff with. So you're not missing out. If your channel relies on this marketing cycle, then let's find it. What's that thing that I said to Melkor? Alright, so Melkor was one of the people that allowed themselves to be appropriated by CA, and he did it to cover Rome Total War, the remaster. And I made a community post where he pointed out that the remaster was so shit it basically killed his channel, and he was dipping out. Hang on, no, that wasn't this. But this was before that. This was just him saying he was disappointed and CA have screwed up, which is what I said was going to happen. I said they were going to screw up. And then there was a conversation where he was quite gracious about this. I think this maybe even helped him come to some awareness of what had happened. But I said to him here, well, my approach is very different. It has me upload one stream on launch where I call it within 10 minutes. Yours has you uploading 40 videos in 30 days, farming views. Sound familiar? With a hell of a lot of people being misled as a consequence. You're saying wasted potential now, but did you say that during any of those 40 videos? The game was in its marketing or hype phase while we did all that, so you were part of its marketing plan, a big part. You were helping to market the game, as you admit in tweets. You say you don't think you're good for critiquing the game. Do you think that's part of why you were allowed to cover it while others were not? And of course I wasn't allowed to cover it in early access, and a few other people that were known critics weren't allowed to. Because I never got any access. Republic of Play didn't get any access. There was another one of the people that were critical of these games. As soon as we got access, we said everything you didn't, and it really didn't take us long, either because you weren't allowed or because you were incapable of it. Do you think it's good for CA to selectively give out early access only to people that are uncritical? Wouldn't it be better for all of us, players and YouTubers both, if we had an actually good game to work with and to cover? I would prefer it if they'd spent their marketing budget on actual development and then critics could give it good reviews and they marketed it that way. And then, and this is the important part and why I bring this up, I then said to him, I don't know if you want to have a channel where all you ever do is engage on empty marketing of a busted flush of a final product and just have a completely seasonal shilling operation of a channel, but that seems to be what you're taking on and encouraging the existence of. This franchise is dying/dead, and I said this 2 years ago. And by the way, I've been calling the death of this franchise since 2013 after Rome 2, because holy shit, that was so bad. But that's it. If you have a channel where all you ever do is engage on empty marketing, seasonal marketing, then your fate is doomed to the fate of Total War. And of course, you even have people around here who have Total War in their fucking channel name, which is oh my god, it's not even that uncommon. So, and it's just weird, you don't see people with Crusader Kings in their name or Europa Universalis in their name. People have their own names. But over here, there's a few, and of course Legend of Total War is the biggest one, but there's other people as well that have Total War in their fucking name. How the fuck do you get out of this? Get away from this? People have to rebrand the shit out of themselves. They have to learn how to diversify. My god, you're proud of your chains. And we'll hear how proud they are in a minute, hang on. But yeah, so in 2014, I think we both experimented with a lot of different games, and we both were playing Dishonored at around the same time. And as I said, my channel was exploding because of the Dishonored I was doing. So much fun, a new way of experiencing games. And he even uploaded a video doing some pretty basic stuff. He was just getting into it, as he says, which is a great thing. He's found a good game, he's having fun with it, he was hoping to get even further with it. but he found the same game and he was watching my videos at the exact same time. Volound or Stealth Gamer BR, I am not, check them out. Their Dishonored content is insane. Cheers, appreciate that. I actually appreciate that. He means that when he says that, because we were uploading good videos and we're still proud of it to this day. That's another thing, we're proud of what we did. We're actually proud of it. We were playing a good game and we were doing stuff that we're proud of and we're still proud of it. But I'm having a lot of fun with Dishonored, very satisfying once you start getting the movement and combat down. And then he links our channels, and I don't know if I even said thanks to him, but I should have said thanks to him, and I should have encouraged him to play this game more, because maybe if I did, he wouldn't have just spent the past 7 years basically just pegged to this fucking shit franchise like a fly on the goddamn corpse, fucking hell, and barely be twice the size that I am. Stealth is like 1 million and something subscribers at this point. I could have done that if I stuck out as well. I just don't want to have what I do end up being like a job like this. I want to avoid that at all fucking costs. But Stealth is happy to have this turn into a job. He's happy to have this turn into a job. I think I would rather be Stealth, I'm just saying, fuck's sake. At least he's playing actually good games. And of course, being like 7 or 8 times bigger helps as well. Makes it a lot easier if you can be 7 or 8 times as big. And he doesn't even talk during his videos. He doesn't have to put pre-order links anywhere. He just plays the games. Fuck's sake. Clockner's another one. Clockner came along and started doing really good videos. Yeah, so that's the kind of... These are the different paths people can go down. So you have Melkor, who just dips out after a while. He had a happy ending to this. I think he's doing quite well. But then you have this shit. So Dishonorable Daimyo is one of the YouTubers that aren't a show when it comes to Total War, and he made a 1 hour 23 minute response to the Terminator, and the Terminator didn't even respond to it. Like, he gave him 80 minutes to work with, and the guy just said, to be honest, it's too much effort to respond to things like this, regardless of whether it deserves a response or not. He would turn it into an argument just to try and prove his points and make me look like a fool, which is generally Volound's modus operandi as well. What the fuck? How can that be my modus operandi when I've basically ignored you? This is the most acknowledgement I've ever given you on this video right now. If I wanted to make a fool out of you, I'd point out that you've fucking flip-flopped, you've done a complete 180 in the past like 6 months or something, because you've realised that the fan base is turning against CA, and that's the cool thing to do now. Like, you're completely unprincipled. As this comment showed, if I wanted to make you like a fool, I would have pointed that out in a video, and I would be doing a video for you, like I'm doing one for Milk and Cookies right now. But I haven't even done that. Maybe I should. We'll get into that later as well. Fuck's sake. And this was a good video. He goes through it on a point-by-point basis, just like I planned to do on this one. And he did another one as well for the other guy, Andy's take. Fucking, this grifting and shilling is just despicable. I think more people should push back against this stuff. Like, see if you have a good mind for games, and you've been keeping up with the Total War scene. I wouldn't mind if I saw people come along and start to do video responses where they just debunk and refute and explain what is actually meant by things. Because there's so much grifting and shelling going on. Like, see, with... I said already about people not having Europa Universalis or Crusader Kings in their names for Paradox people, but Paradox YouTubers don't have pre-order links in their video descriptions every time there's a new DLC. This is an exclusively Total War phenomenon. It's just not heard of over there. There's something wrong with this scene. Like, seriously, there's something wrong with it. It's like, it makes me feel like I haven't pushed back enough against the grifting and the shilling, despite going as hard as I have over the years. Like Mr. Smart Donkey, when he did his genuinely thing for genuinely Warhammer 3. The only time I've really actually gone after people is when they've attacked me first, like Mr. Smart Donkey did. I've pretty much never picked fights with people. I'm only even doing this right now because there were a few things this guy said that just rubbed me the wrong way, and that I had to deal with, and that I'm going to get into. But yeah, let's proceed.
Variety of reasons. If you worked at a deli or a fancy restaurant, and a customer came into your kitchen to yell at you, to demand things at you, to say that the price increase of sandwiches or escargot was insane, and they told you to protest that increase by boycotting your job, and just said, no, don't make any more money, you would laugh them out of the building. It is ridiculous and entitled to demand that someone's not making money and supporting themselves. It is ridiculous.
Alright, so if someone works in an Indian call centre trying to scam old ladies, I think everyone would say, fuck you, get a real job. Don't you think everyone would say that? I don't think it really matters to people if that's how they make a living and get food. Sometimes people just have to be told to get a fucking grip and stop being a piece of shit, don't they? I think we all agree on that. Alright, so that's just one example. Another example, a used car salesman that peddles hucks off shit to people, overpriced tat that isn't worth a dick. Someone that does that, I think we all would regard them with disdain as well and tell them to get their shit together. So it's quite easy to find examples of people that are just parasites that just leech off of the systems that are in place and that deserve to be given some flack. You know, demand. What does he says here?
Just said, no, don't make any more money. You would laugh them out of the building. It is ridiculous and entitled to demand that someone stop making money and supporting themselves because you don't like a product. When covering that product...
Alright, see if you have a job that needs to get done, like a tradesman has to come in and do some plumbing or do some plaster work. You want someone that actually does it properly and that isn't trying to get you to buy something you don't need or make commission off of some shit just for the sake of it for something that you don't actually need to have what you want. That's the kind of criticism that's going on here. People are saying to you, you're allowed to cover Total War, you're allowed to upload videos of Total War. What we have a problem with is knowingly carrying water for a fucking shit company that is trying to rip us off with unethical business practices, that's trying to fucking nickel and dime us, as you've already acknowledged. You've already acknowledged the problem, so they're trying to get you to help them with that, which you could easily do by just doing anything else. Why do you have to sit shilling for this company when they want you to? Why do you have to be a little rent boy that's on speed dial and just comes running whenever they need you to? It's pathetic. That's what they're saying. They don't want to see this.
Is their job. No one is demanding Al Michaels boycotts commentating NFL games when there's a CTE concussion scandal or when the NFL attempts to cover up domestic abuse, match fixing, or gambling problems, right? It's not on Al Michaels. It's not on the guy who commentates the games to fix those issues, to deal with the corruption inherent in the NFL. He's doing his job. His mere existence does not make him complicit in the misdoings of those who employ him. Each and every one of us buys products.
If they take action they don't need to, that assists in that corruption, they'll be held responsible for it. If there's some domestic abuse scandal, then whatever they did as part of that domestic abuse, they'll be responsible for. It's not like they can just say, I was just following orders. If you do something that's unethical, people are going to look down on you. If you do something that's illegal, the law is going to come after you. And also, you've had like a decade to get a new job and you've just continued to engage in this as well. That's another thing. Like, you've stuck it out. You knew what you signed up for. You know for a fact that you're on a ship that's going down, that's struck an iceberg and is taken on water. That's been the case for the past decade. So you've had all the warning you could need. How do you need more than a decade? They could just as easily say, why would you buy a property that you know is right on the coast at the face of a cliff that's constantly crumbling into the sea, when you know for a fact eventually it's going to just fall into the ocean and be worth nothing and be gone? They could just as easily say that. And imagine they're your neighbours that don't want their house to crumble and fall into the sea, and they're appealing to you to shore up your section of the fucking cliff face, and you're just not interested. You're just doing the unethical, selfish thing of allowing the entire cliff face to just buckle and have its structure fucked. That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here. It's like a tragedy of the commons. Let's just all not give a shit and let's watch everything go to shit, is what you're saying at the moment.
Products from or tacitly supports companies who do very evil things on a daily or weekly basis. That is the reality of the world we live in today. If you work in the corporate world, or really anywhere, or buy anything, or do anything, you are at least indirectly feeding money to people whose sole job it is to exploit, trample, trash, and devastate people's lives for profit. Many of us are employed by those same kinds of people. At home, right now, I have patent leather Jordans that were probably made in some Bangladeshi sweatshop with the fingers of 8-year-olds making 15 cents a day. My iPhone has cobalt and other rare earth materials that were probably dug up in some hellish African mine. If you're playing games on a PC, or you bought a Mars bar recently, or do you just live in any developed country, you have almost certainly participated in that same kind of stuff. So when I, or Sotek, or Legend, or anybody else makes a video about the DLC and has fun with it, then leaves some constructive feedback or critique for it, and we get these comments saying, wow, why are you advertising this DLC, bro? That's so unethical, bro. Why aren't you in solidarity with the community, bro? You shouldn't cover it at all, bro. That is very much, well, you criticize society, yet you participate in it. Curious kind of energy.
No, that is what you're doing right now by doing this big floppy appeal to hypocrisy. You're doing it, you muppet. Alright, so he's talking there about this. This is Mr. Gotcha, which is what he just did. He just did what he's accusing other people of doing, so it seems extremely confused. So Apple AirPods cost $159, but they can't pay taxes, decent wages to their Chinese factory workers. You said that on an iPhone. Gotcha. Which is true, but this is true as well. Obviously she said it on an iPhone, obviously that causes suffering. She could easily buy some Chinese knockoff that costs about 20% of what that thing does. You can buy phones that are more ethical, but at the same time, this is correct. So this is true, and this is true. This does not mean that this is false. This does not mean that this is false. These are both true. It's the intention behind this that's the problem. They're both true. Cars should have seatbelts, yet you bought one. Hypocrite much? Owned. So he's saying cars should have seatbelts. Correct, that's why they do. And he's saying, yet you bought one that didn't have a seatbelt. So what he's saying is, if it's not perfect, you're a hypocrite. Which is pretty much what we're getting from milk and cookies at the moment. If you're not morally perfect with your consumption, how dare you criticise other people about theirs? He is the embodiment of this cartoon right now. But this is the one that matters here. We should improve society somewhat, and this is a feudal peasant. And then this Mr. Gotcha jumps out of a well and says, yet you participate in society, curious, I am very intelligent. So this is Mr. Gotcha using the appeal to hypocrisy here, which is exactly what he just did here. I think he's extremely confused. He needs to think about this more. He's wrecking himself. It seems like he's just trying to confuse people. He's just tossing out shit and seeing what sticks, and he doesn't even care if he wrecks himself. Everything he's doing here seems like a giant virtue signal to muddy the waters. That's what I think, honestly. And the worst thing is, the virtue signal isn't even him saying, I am anti-capitalist. It's just giving lip service to things that sound remotely conscientious. This is the most pseudo-intellectual wank you'll ever see.
Legend, or anybody else makes a video about the DLC and has fun with it, then leaves some constructive feedback or critique for it, and we get these comments saying, wow, why are you advertising this DLC, bro? That's so unethical, bro. Why aren't you in solidarity with the community, bro? You shouldn't cover it at all, bro. That is very much, well, you criticize society, yet you participate in it. Curious kind of energy. You can make an...
No, that's what he just did. He just did that there. He laid out examples of societal, structural, systemic problems, and then he tried to... Let's listen to it again.
Each and every one of us buys products from or tacitly supports companies who do very evil things on a daily or weekly basis. That is the reality of the world we live in today. If you work in the corporate world, or really anywhere, or buy anything...
Alright, so that was this part.
...or do anything, you are at least indirectly feeding money to people whose sole job it is to exploit, trample, trash, and devastate people's lives for profit.
He's doing a Mr. Gotcha here. He's trying to say that you are a consumer, so you are responsible for suffering and misery. Look, he's doing this here. You could just change what's in these little speech bubbles. Take this text out here and put in, I can't believe you are marketing this DLC for CA. And then he says, you said that on an iPhone. Gotcha. He just did what he's describing here and accusing other people of doing. And then over here, we should improve CA's business practices somewhat. And then he's already done all of that here earlier with anyone that participates in society is causing suffering. So he's already done. He's doing what he's accusing other people of doing. Other people are saying, we should improve things. We should expect better. We should try and make an improvement here where we can right now. And he's trying to make excuses not to do it. He's appealing to futility. He is appealing to hypocrisy. Oh my god, he just wrecks himself and then he appeals to the exact comic that he saw on Reddit or something that put these ideas in his head. Jesus Christ, he left the breadcrumbs.
Many of us are employed by those same kinds of people. At home, right now, I have patent leather Jordans that were probably made in some Bangladeshi sweatshop with the fingers of 8-year-olds making 15 cents a day. My iPhone has cobalt and other rare earth materials that were probably dug up in some hellish African mine. If you're playing games on a PC, or you bought a Mars bar recently, or do you just live in any developed country, you have almost certainly participated in that same kind of stuff. So when I, or Sotek, or Legend...
Yeah, he just does the Mr. Gotcha. He says, you said that on an iPhone, buddy.
Or anybody else makes a video about the DLC and has fun with it, then leaves some constructive feedback or critique for it, and we get these comments saying, wow, why are you advertising this DLC, bro? That's so unethical, bro. Why aren't you...
Which it is. You are agreeing to be appropriated by CA for their marketing purposes. You're helping them market a pile of tat, and you've already acknowledged there's a problem with what they're doing, of course.
Solidarity with the community, bro. You shouldn't cover it at all, bro. That is very much, well, you criticize society, yet you participate in it. Curious kind of energy. You can make anyone sound hypocritical with that kind of logic. It's stupid. Literally anyone on planet Earth. Of course.
But this is what you do. You have just basically said to everyone, you are not a perfect moral being. You're not a vegan, eco-green consumer that has never bought a single Mars bar, so you can't say this. You've just said this. There's no one out there with a brain that actually claims that they are a perfectly ethical consumer, but there are people out there that actually make an effort to be ethical with their consumption. For fuck's sake, that's the whole point in vegans, for example. They make a point of not ever consuming unethically in a way that causes harm to animals. And also, as a consequence, they avoid causing exploitation to people that work in slaughterhouses. They don't want... Vegans don't give any slaughterhouse workers PTSD, or what's it called, PIDS, perpetrator-induced PTSD. They don't do that. They've avoided that, just like I avoided anyone ever... Get a load of this. Look, I've never been responsible for this. For something I'm working on. Have you ever pre-ordered a game after a YouTuber or streamer talked it up during the run-up to release? Now answer the poll. If you can remember more than one occasion, answer the poll with reference to the most recent one. No, never. Ignore that one. Yes, and the game was even better than I expected it to be. 4%. Yes, and the game was exactly as described. Perfect coverage. 12%. Yes, but it was disappointing. I felt like I got played. 15%. So the number of people that actually got what they wanted or better is only half. And the number of people that thought it was better than the streamer described is only 4% compared to 16% that thought it was worse. So when you are surprised by a streamer's recommendation for a pre-order, 80% of the time it is a bad outcome, 20% of the time it's a good outcome. That is terrible. That means that streamers recommending games do it really badly and you should never do it. If you're a streamer, you should pretty much just never recommend people to pre-order games or talk games up before they launch, because look what happens. 15% of people got disappointed out of 31%, so half of all outcomes are just disappointment, feeling like people got played. And you're going to tell me that we're all just the same. There's no ethical YouTubing under capitalism, so every YouTuber is equally as bad as every other YouTuber. We all cause the exact same amount of exploitation, even though I've never encouraged people to pre-order and you do it all the time and you still do it. Fuck off.
Of course, all that evil and exploitation does not in any way absolve CA of their anti-consumer practices. It does not absolve them from criticism. But you obviously will not keep that same energy in every aspect of your life because you can't. It's not possible. It's not reasonable. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Oh, fuck off. This is part of why I had to respond to this. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. TINECUC. TINECUC, because that's the kind of people that make this argument. This is the most pseudo-intellectual handwave going around right now. This was already retarded when it came out years ago, and since it started to do the rounds on social media like TikTok and Twitter, it has become even more embarrassing. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism assumes that ethics is something worth talking about. You've already granted that ethics are a real thing and that it's to do with consumption and that there's a systemic problem that has to be addressed. So you care about addressing, surely, the problem of capitalism and all the exploitation it causes at every level of production. Just think, for example, of when you see videos of milk just getting emptied off of carts onto the grass. Do you know why that happens? They get forcibly impregnated. Alright, this is what has to happen at the start. And then once they give birth to the calves get ripped away, and then they get milked, and all that just for the milk to get tossed into the dirt. Do you know why that happens? It's not because the milk is worthless, it's because it's not profitable. There are people that would buy that milk and that want that milk, but it would cost more to actually deliver it to them through the chain of production than it would to just toss it into the dirt. Another example along the same lines is how France is destroying something like 200 million euros worth of wine because it can't make more money out of it by selling it. It either loses less money or makes more money by destroying it than it does by actually bringing it to market and selling it. Welcome to capitalism. This is exploitative as fuck. This is inherently a problem of capitalism, the systems that are involved. It causes waste, it causes suffering, it causes exploitation. But people make decisions to try and minimise that. This is the personal responsibility that everyone has. Do you think a slave owner in a plantation, in the plantation system like 150 years ago, when they were farming cotton and sugar, do you think a slave owner could ever just say, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, so I can't do anything about all of the suffering that my slaves are experiencing that I'm directly responsible for. I have no individual responsibility for all of these slaves I've got. I'm part of a system like everyone else. I've got to just keep having slaves. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not responsible for it. Of course they wouldn't. You would think they were ridiculous. This is why this is so brain dead. Or to give another example of personal responsibility, do you think in Nazi Germany, when all of these capitalists, industrialists, were using slaves to do stuff like run factories and build weapons, do you think that the ones that managed to smuggle Jews out of the factories and get them to safety in countries like Belgium or the Netherlands or America, the ones that actually escaped the Holocaust, are you going to just say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, so it didn't make any difference that they did that? Of course not. Are you going to say they had no personal responsibility in managing to get those slaves out? Of course not. That would be disgusting if you were to say that. Holy shit. You're not gonna give blame or credit for any decisions that are made under capitalism because you have this excuse to just ignore it with this little glib fucking sentence that you've read on Reddit. Jesus Christ, this is just pathetic. I fucking hate this. I don't know how people's brains can retain this. I don't know how this lodges itself like a worm in people's brains and they just fucking say this without feeling completely stupid, because on some level, as soon as you think this, you have to know on some level it's retarded. Like, you have to just know. Are you going to tell me that when someone does the worst possible things to kids and then sells videos of it on the internet to people in the West, like Vosh maybe, that that person that buys it is not doing something unethical, that there isn't an obvious unethical component to what they're doing, that they're not personally responsible for causing the supply with their demand? Are you really going to tell me that? Are you going to say you have no ethical problem with spending money to subsidize these practices? Of course you're not going to say that. That would be ridiculous. You know immediately, intuitively, even if you can't articulate it, why that's a retarded thing to say. It's a nirvana fallacy. That's what that's called, and it's brain dead.
And in the grand scheme, possible. It's not reasonable. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And in the grand scheme of ethics violations, a price increase on a Total War DLC is pretty low on the totem pole. So,
Of course it is, but that's what we're discussing right now. That's what we're all here doing right now. So you could say that in every circumstance. So whenever someone isn't addressing the greatest possible injustice, you just write them off with, there are bigger things to be worried about, there are bigger things to be concerned about, there are bigger things to care about. It's funny how whenever people say this kind of stuff, they've never even dealt with all of the biggest ones. They don't abstain from any of the most exploitative shit. They don't even care. They've not even looked it up. This is lip service, all of it, every time whenever people say this shit.
Oh, if you're wondering why Total War content creators might criticize the DLC, but still cover it, it's because it's their job, and demanding that they not make money for it is not a realistic or fair demand.
Do you know what I could do? I could just dedicate my channel to debunking shill apologia whenever it rears its head. I would be way more active, I would make way more money, I could even put product placements on it. Like, see those videos that Dishonorable Daimyo made in response to the Terminator and Andy's take? I think they're some of his best performing videos. He's incentivized strongly to make more of those, and I would actually encourage him to do that. So if that becomes his job or my job, and we pay bills with it and we buy food with it, are you going to have any problem with us doing that? Like we have a problem with you doing what you're doing, assuming we do? Because remember, it's not me that actually has a problem right now. It's not me that he's addressing with this. I haven't complained to him a single time. This is all his own subscribers, people that are fans of Warhammer that are complaining about this, that see this as important. So are you gonna then have a problem with me using the argument you just used when the argument is at your expense? Of course not. It's not a good argument. I make money out of doing something shitty is not a good argument. Nobody that ever did something shitty and then just said, but it's my job, ever got much respect. I'll just put it that way.
But still cover it, it's because it's their job, and demanding that they not make money for it is not a realistic or fair demand.
I don't think you're doing a very good job of defending your job, which is presumably what you're supposed to be doing right now. I think whenever someone is appealing to their customers or their audience or whatever, and their best defense presumably is to just say it's my job to do this, I think they've lost the audience at that point. So here's Mr. Smart Donkey saying that it was his job to shill for Warhammer 3 with pre-order links. Next, this has nothing to do with CA. I've been promoting the stores I'm affiliated with since I've been affiliated with them. It's part of the job as a YouTuber. I don't do it. Even when YouTube was my job and I relied on it to pay bills and buy food, I never shilled with pre-order links. It wasn't part of the job for us. There's plenty of YouTubers that don't shill bad games with pre-order links. So this is another one. It's funny how it's only Total War YouTubers that ever claim that being a shill is part of the job. You could say it's part of the job to upload videos of Total War, but shilling for games with pre-order links, that's never been part of the job. That's not been part of the job for anyone I know. I know plenty of YouTubers and talk to plenty of YouTubers that have made a living out of doing YouTube with games, and none of them have ever told me that being a shill was part of the job. They've just played good games and uploaded videos of good games, so it's just bizarre. It's funny how we're hearing it now though, suddenly, over the past few years.
Really make money for it is not a realistic or fair demand. I think a lot of people don't really realize how important launches like this are for creators anyway. YouTube is, generally speaking, even if you're in that upper echelon, not like some crazy lifestyle, right? If there are 3 major launches in a year, that's 3 opportunities to make decent money. So skipping an entire cycle is a huge blow to their ability to support themselves, and not all of us creators are in the same kind of financial position. That's a lot more devastating for some people than it is for others.
Also, I should mention, because it would be just totally remiss if I didn't, but what he's talking about is giving free coverage to this game from Creative Assembly, because Creative Assembly know he's going to do it for free. They're not going to send him money to do something that they know that he's going to do anyway. He's just lost all leverage that he had by admitting that he's got to do this. They've not paid him to make any of these videos. He can correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't seen any payment anywhere. But what will happen is that CA will pay YouTubers that they don't expect to cover this, to cover it. They give out money to people that aren't going to cover it to make sure they cover it, while these people do it for free. They do it for free. Oh my god. And then he talks about it being part of the job. If CA actually paid you to cover it, you could call this more of a job, ironically.
More than that, it just runs counter to what our job is and what we do. Asking a Total War content creator to not make Total War content on the newest Total War release is silly. On the subject of criticism...
It's not silly. Just play good games and make videos of good games. I did it for like 3 years, and my channel tripled in size. You tried to do it as well, and then you gave up. Just try again. You're going to have to do it sooner or later. You already see YouTubers like Legends of Total War making efforts to break away. I think he's getting on with Starfield right now, which is its own story. But you have Reheated that went over to Men of War. Pixelated Apollo just covers the old games that aren't Warhammer. And then there's Pilps that just does better Total War games and all sorts of different games. You had that other YouTuber, Party Elite. There's plenty of ways to make a living by not covering Total War. As soon as I stopped covering Total War and started covering Far Cry and Dishonored, my monthly ad revenue skyrocketed. I was having more fun, I was spending less time on it, and I was getting more money for my time. And I even had opportunities that happened from that, whereas before I was just stuck covering a dying franchise. I cover Total War now just because it's satisfying. I get satisfaction out of this. I'm currently getting the catharsis for myself that you're going to eventually have to find for yourself as well. What it sounds like to me is that you're actually saying that your job is to be a shill and you can't do your job without shilling. That's where it ultimately comes down to.
Criticism, a lot of people seem to have a serious misconception about what we are allowed to do, especially before review embargoes.
Yeah, and this is another thing. Not only are you covering it for free, but you are agreeing to a non-disparagement clause, an NDA, a non-disparagement agreement. You're not even allowed to say how shit this is. And not only are you not allowed to do it by signing something, presumably an embargo, but you know that if you do something that they don't like, you're going to get fucked. They're going to just stop giving you free access. They're going to remove you from all the little groups, and they're going to stop giving you access to stuff for free.
They seem to think that the only time creators criticize a product is after that review embargo lifts, and once people start playing themselves. That they go to Reddit, they see the outcry, and the only time the critique happens from them, the bought and paid for shills, is once Reddit or the forums starts making a big stink. Which,
of course, we've already seen this in action with all these other shows. It's confirmed that this is the modus operandi. This is how they work. The ones that are especially unprincipled, that just go with the flow, they do this every time. It's like clockwork, and I've already named a few of them. On my subreddit, there's a tag called Shillfluencers that documents the shilling. On my Discord, there's a channel called Just Shill Things, where we document the shilling operation over time, and we can scroll back and see it all, the whole history of it. So this is false. Bullshit. Calling absolute BS on this.
Which is obviously untrue just by using your eyeballs and having ears, by looking at the release dates of...
Absolutely not. You can just go through these people's catalogs and you can see the switch happen. You can even see the thumbnails change and the titles change.
videos, you can see that that's not true. But a massive amount of feedback is given to the devs internally long before anything becomes...
Also, let's look for this. Alright, here we go. Nearly half of customers that elected to pay for Warhammer 3 have given it a negative review on Steam. Mixed reviews at 62% positive currently. Can you think of any YouTubers or streamers that were given early access and gave it a negative review? Only 1 in 5 said yes. Half said no. A third say they weren't allowed. And 10% joined in with a joke about pre-order affiliate links. And then someone says here, Mandalore and Cody Bonds were the only ones to my knowledge that actually had the balls to point out all the game's flaws and issues. The second, pointing out things that were done in previous games like Medieval. Mandalore is the only channel I can think that didn't give him mountains of praise, having played all but 2 factions for 50 hours. He was too generous. It's marginally better in Rome 2's launch. Mandalore is the only one. Mandalore and Legend of Total War were negative to it, recommending to wait until bugs were fixed before purchasing it, and the state of the game was generally unacceptable. So, no one is giving him credit here. None of them are saying he was getting it right. He never got it right. If he came out, like I did, Like, see, if I got early access to this and said about it, I would have had it right, and I would have been named in my own comment section. I'm on poll here, and this would have been 100% yes, pretty much. But as it stood, it was only 1 in 5, and a few people elaborated. And he was making videos like this in the lead up to Warhammer 3. So he was hyping it up, including pre-order links. And then over here, you've got my video. Warhammer 3 is a $60 DLC pipeline, and its improvement all fits on a 2-page blog post, which has been vindicated perfectly again. Look at that. It's almost got 30 or 40% downvotes, and it's completely right. And all the people causing a hissy fit on the subreddit would agree with everything I say here, even though they were spurging out in the comments the entire time, leaving stupid pushback. And guess what? The game's a buggy mess after a whole year after launch, and I was right about everything. Look at this. Even the stuff that they fixed that I told them to do, but like the difficulty modifiers, was not enough to redeem this and make it worth anything. Holy shit. So I called it there. He didn't call it, I called it. I watched the Siege rework and said it was garbage. He was talking it up, saying it was cool. It wasn't cool. What the fuck? All you had to do is know how to play these games and watch what they actually said they were going to do. My Siege rework video is there, you can look at it. His videos are there, you can look at it, you can compare them. Who got it right, who didn't? What the fuck?
They seem to think that the only time creators criticize a product is after that review embargo lifts, and once people start playing themselves. That they go to Reddit, they see the outcry, and the only time the critique happens from them, the bought and paid for shills, is once Reddit or the forums starts making a big stink, which is obviously untrue just by using your eyeballs and having ears. By looking at the release dates of videos, you can see that that's not true, but a massive amount of feedback is given to the devs.
It's just what I thought. He's trying to make out that he's allowed to think for himself, he's allowed to be critical, he's allowed to cause CA problems and cost them money, he's allowed to expose when these games have big problems, but a simple recounting of all the facts of the past, especially the past 2 years, shows that that's clearly not the case. He doesn't have the freedom to do that. He doesn't perceive himself to have the freedom to do that. Just look at Mr. Genuinely, who shilled Warhammer 3, a game he didn't give a shit about, because he was so scared of being removed from the content creator program. It's just so obvious, you can't deny this stuff.
Internally, long before anything becomes public, and much of that feedback is put in videos that become the impetus for change. Videos that go public at the same time as the announcement trailer, so long before any stink has been raised on Reddit or forums. For example, unique start positions for lords of the same faction. Traditionally were not going to be a thing for Warhammer 1, but internal and video feedback helped get that changed fairly quickly, and now it's something we kind of just take for granted, but that wasn't necessarily going to be the design earlier on in the game's lifecycle. Or the Tzeentch Warriors reveal and pre-release for Game 3. That discussion was literally started by me, days before any Reddit post happened, before there was any public backlash whatsoever. I had the trailer, I had the press kit, the images, and I made a video talking at length about how Monogod Warriors should not look and play the same. That was something that I had talked about many times before in my Lore Army and Tactics series as well.
I have no idea what this means. I haven't kept up with this whatsoever, but from what he's describing, it seems plausible that something like this could in fact be the case. And of course, I've already described how the fake difficulty modifiers thing was only done because I, first of all, provided the analogies and the descriptions that everyone needed to actually understand the problem, and harped on about it for years, and had other YouTubers basically just copy what I said, like Zerkovich, and upload videos, just rote copying what I said and making their own videos to basically take credit for it without pointing out that they were just copying what I said. And then it finally gets fixed with Warhammer 3, and I've taken credit for that in videos, and I've laid out the chain of events, even in community posts that you should check. I made a community post on that last night. So it's not implausible that something like this would happen.
So ultimately, directly led to Champions of Chaos and those varied units once the ball got rolling publicly. When I say that internal and external feedback has made a huge impact on the series, that is one of thousands of examples. So anytime you hear someone say, oh...
But the game, nonetheless, is a buggy pile of shit. So it was all for nothing pretty much. This game is going to get abandoned. People are not going to look back on it fondly. No one's going to be playing this in 5 years. This is going to just be a pile of shit forever. It's stuck like that. How many people are actually working on improving this game? I think I read it was one person doing patches and bug testing and all that stuff. One person. This game has been dropped dead, and they're just milking the last drops out the teat. The DLC pipeline has started to run dry, and they're not even going to bother continuing to fix the game. They're going to just leave it fucked. So it was all for nothing. It didn't pay off. You didn't do enough, you could even argue. If you're trying to talk about what you did, what didn't you do? You didn't do any of this that I did, just for a start, and I spend barely any time on Warhammer. You could have easily done everything I've done if you actually cared about doing this, if you were motivated by the same things.
The feedback doesn't mean anything. They don't care about what you say on Reddit. That's not true. I can literally name dozens, hundreds, thousands of examples of feedback directly leading to improvements in the game. So yeah, if you've been following the channel for a long time and actually paying attention, you'll know that constructively criticizing CA, Fat Shark, Crytek, or any of their games is not an issue, even before review embargoes. I have hundreds of videos at this point specifically calling out business practices, power creep, game-breaking bugs, poor design, lore mistakes, all that kinds of stuff. It's not something I've ever felt the need to shy away from. It can be a massive force for good when it comes to the direction of this franchise. But there is a balance to be struck, and there have been times where I've been too negative and too focused on the bad.
That's hard to believe. Holy shit, too negative. This is the third time this game has been released. You're fine with it. 20 DLCs that cost like $500. They've been making the same game pretty much since Rome 2. How much worse can it get? You're dedicated to a franchise that's decayed so much that the gameplay now consists of spamming 19 of the same unit, having single entity supermen that just run around the battlefield like Benny Hill, where you click bomb buttons that just delete units like a kill tool in paint, a death brushstroke. That's the gameplay now, and you're saying things are not that bad? Give me a fucking break. Get real. Get fucking real.
All in the spirit of just wanting the game to improve. And I'm not an inherently negative person. I don't like to fixate on negative things. I'd rather just play the game and have fun, but there are times where it's required, where it's necessary. Obviously, there's going to be inherent...
Like when your game is about to be abandoned with almost no money being put towards fixing it, and you are instead making videos covering the latest DLC that they've priced up by 150%. Okay, yeah.
Bias with my perspective. I like Total War. I like Warhammer. That's why I made this channel in the first place. That is always something that should be in the back of your mind, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I don't usually review DLC or Total War games, because I am naturally biased towards liking them. So yes, my review does matter. It would matter, but I don't necessarily feel the need to, because I'm probably going to play it anyway. Obviously, I am biased. But that has not, and does not, prevent me from saying what I believe to be the truth about this series, especially because I know that my voice, and the voice of the community at large, can make these games better, even if it's only in a small way. So I always strive to be constructive with my criticism when possible, to offer potential solutions, to look at the perspective of both the consumer and the developer and realize that sometimes the consumers are absolutely right, and sometimes they are dead wrong. I am not afraid of being blacklisted or having early access taken away from me due to criticism, because there are very simple guidelines to follow that prevent that from happening. Don't leak information or break embargoes. Don't privately share internal communications with devs without their permission. Don't call out or be rude to individual members of CA. Don't publicly lambast or start personal drama with other creators or developers. Don't be a massive raging dickhead. In other words, be relatively professional and you are absolutely fine. Other than that, yeah, I can and do pretty much say anything I want about any of these games without fear of reprisal. And in any example you can give me, I promise you there was a logical, reasonable explanation for why someone got blacklisted.
This is where he basically just confirms that he is a good little company man, a little brown-nosing company boy carrying water for this absolutely shit company. Because remember, he's talking about all of this when they removed Total War Cat 2 weeks after Ukraine, because this is the 9th of March, and they sent the email to Total War Cat to tell him that he's been removed. They waited until his country was involved in a war, a big propaganda blitz, before they removed him, because they knew they would just have to point out that this guy's Russian, and it would be guaranteed that they would get away with this, because this guy was critical of Total War for months, and they were just waiting for an excuse to get rid of him, and he kept on being smart and not doing anything outrageous, and then the fact that he was Russian was enough to get him removed on the 9th of March 2022. Holy shit, how full of shit can you get? And then of course there's Legend of Total War, who critiqued Thrones of Britannia, and then they had their excuse of an email being leaked, and then they removed them as well. And then there is Prince of Macedon. Yeah, that sounds very accurate. Whenever the newest CA guy emailed me, he kept on mentioning that he wouldn't tolerate me telling people that I was wronged in the past by CA. It was incredibly unprofessional to keep doing that. I always dreaded reading his emails because it was a broken record. So this is CA trying to dangle a carrot in front of Prince of Macedon to get compliance for him, because if he doesn't stop doing this, he's not going to get free access to the games anymore. I don't know how naive you have to be to think that CA are involved with YouTubers for any reason other than making money, and that the moment they judge you as not being profitable anymore, they get rid of you. We've seen it documented extensively that they use early access and involvement as a carrot, and they use excommunication and distancing as a stick to manipulate YouTubers, to cow them into compliance and submission. We know that by now. I don't know how naive you have to be to think that this works any other way. Also, there's the fact that Legend of Total War got removed for leaking emails. That was the official reason. And of course the actual reason was he was really critical of Thrones of Britannia on launch, and he just trashed the whole game's reputation. And also there's the fact that while he was given early access to Thrones of Britannia, I think he was also uploading weird alt-right Pepe Kekistan campaigns and doing all this other really dodgy alt-right shit. Maybe even having some tenuous associations with Sargon of Akkad, like having him post on his videos and stuff. And then there's also Arch Warhammer, of course, who was one of Sargon's acolytes that appeared in the background of his streams and his hangouts, just cackling on in the background with that other guy, V. So they had, and this was something that I knew who fucking Arch Warhammer was before he even started getting involved with Total War and Warhammer, because I knew who Sargon of Akkad was when he had like 200 subscribers, and I was tracking that shit all the way. From 200 subscribers up to 1 million, I knew who Sargon of Akkad was. I watched YouTube atheism transform into YouTube anti-SJW Gamergate. I watched that entire process. And if you don't believe me, go to Rational Wiki and go into the history and find when 9/11 Truther first gets added to his article. Yep, that was me, yours truly. And as soon as I did that, there was a massive slew of videos on YouTube, and that presumably helped to crash his UKIP bid in the UK. You're welcome, humanity. So I was watching Sargon, and I saw that guy with his super villain comic book character rolling the R's accent, and I never forgot it. And then I come back to Total War in 2019, and I find out that guy's a Total War covering YouTuber and has been for years. It's like, holy shit, see, what have you done? How did you miss this when I knew it from the first second I came across this guy? Holy shit, they don't care about your character, what you've done. All they care about is whether you'll make them money by making their games out to be really good. If you clap like a little CEO and be like, yeah, CA, keep making DLC, keep making this, I'm going to keep putting pre-order links. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. Get people to buy the shit they're putting out, and we love you. Thumbs up. Simple as. Don't be fucking stupid talking this shit.
So when it comes to Shadows of Change, I'm still going to make videos for it. I'm still going to cover battles.
Of course you are. You're a good little boy.
Stuff. I have some good ideas for content moving forward, but I am frustrated with the direction of the franchise over the last year and a half. I am annoyed with the patching process and why it takes so long to fix well-known bugs that...
Not enough to stop covering their shit until they fix it.
obviously damage the experience. I do think it's lame that Warhammer 3, despite being a fun game and one that I have enjoyed for many hours, has so consistently dropped the ball on elements of battle and campaign since launch. And more than anything,
That's more like it.
I'm just a bit bewildered that despite all the content that's been added, the core experience is in many ways worse than it was 3 years ago, which is not how building and iterating and improving should occur.
Oh, no shit. It's almost like there's no fucking point in covering this because it's just inferior. It's almost like it was inferior all along, like it was worse than Shogun 2 all along, like it was worse than Medieval 1 all along. Oh, when do we start admitting it? Are we at that point yet where we start admitting this? How many more months is it going to be before we get to that line, you know? Oh my god.
Shadows of Change is not a terrible DLC. It has lots of good content in it. It is not going to be a financial disaster for CA. But I do believe it was...
Because I should point out that the Reddit has already gotten there. There's already Reddit threads that get like 2,000 upvotes that are like, how come Shogun 2 and Napoleon are just way better? They are way more tactical, way more interesting, they look better, they sound better. How the hell did CA do so well 10 years ago, and then you look at Warhammer and it's just such a superficial arcadey pile of shit? The Reddit has already outflanked you. You have to catch up. You're not actually helping yourself catch up by taking this stance here. In fact, this is going to age really badly. I don't understand how you can't think ahead. You still can't think ahead. It's just ridiculous.
It was a blunder. I believe they've damaged a lot of the goodwill they've generated before the release of Warhammer 3, and that their communications to the community in response were poorly timed, poorly thought out, and rushed out, and ran in direct opposition to the advice we gave them before they went live with it. I am hoping to see some significant improvements in the coming months and years. Timed, poorly thought out. I believe it was a blunder. I believe they've damaged a lot of the goodwill they've generated before the release of Warhammer 3, and that their communications to the community in response were poorly timed, poorly thought out, and rushed out, and ran in direct opposition to the advice we gave them before they went live with it. I am hoping to see some significant improvements in the coming months and years, not just for the sake of the Warhammer trilogy, but for the sake of the Total War franchise and its community on the whole. Because Total War is a lot bigger than just Warhammer. And if the same bullshit keeps happening with Empire 2, Medieval 3, Pharaoh, and 40k, they're going to find their consumer base dwindling rapidly. And if I know one thing about business, that is the one thing a business cannot abide.
Well, if you keep making more videos like this, your entire subscriber base of the past decade is going to just lose all respect for you and think that you just talk crap, and is going to just find people that say things that are more principled and substantial and aren't just fluff meant to placate them. This video, it seems to me, was clearly just an exercise in placation of an audience to damage control, so it seems like he's done the exact same thing CA did. CA did their own damage control, he's now doing his damage control, and he's going to just full steam ahead with what he was planning on doing all along. That's what I think this was. And it's funny. And there are people here that have called this out, like the no ethical consumption under capitalism, handwave, pseudo-intellectual, thought-terminating cliche, avoidance of responsibility. That gets called out here a few times, but there are people that just buy this, like that absolute brainlet 40 IQ apologetic. It goes over quite well with some of these people. It's pathetic. Look at this word as well. Zoomer words for Zoomer brains. Alright, let's give an example of a YouTuber that actually handles this in a dignified way. And remember, this guy has never been in any content creator program, so he can't get blacklisted. And if he was in any content creator program, he would have been blacklisted for this by now, I guarantee it. And also, I should mention, I was never blacklisted by CA for anything I did. I was just removed from their content creator thing. And I know that because the person that was in charge of the decision to remove me appeared with perfect timing on a Legend of Total War stream and explained that he might still want to talk to me, and he kept me added as a friend on Discord for months or years after I was removed. So he hoped I would come crawling back to him So it was never about anything I did. It was all about whether I could be controlled and be useful and be profitable, and I was unwilling to be. And that's why I am not in their content creator program, and you are. And I would say that's how you can know I have principles and can be trusted. I don't think you have any credibility if you're involved with CA. If you've agreed to be an extension of their marketing department, if you've allowed yourself to be appropriated to help them make money, then you can't be trusted. You've got no credibility whatsoever. No one can take anything you say seriously. This has to be hammered on, I think, because it's become very obvious over the past few years that to be a content creator, a content partner, is to just be a shill. That's all it is now. It's just a shill. The ones that go their own way, I think this is a useful distinction. The ones that try and suck up to CA and get something out of a relationship with CA, those are shills. The ones that try and just suck off of Total War and YouTube's algorithm, I think those are more grifters. I think that's a useful distinction that could serve people well. But in complete opposition to that, we have Pilps, who has just been honest this entire time. He makes videos with good games that he respects, and he puts work into making actual videos, and it shows. And he's got a response here. So to sum up this whole situation, to contrast with what we just went over, take away Pilps. My opinion in Creative Assembly's Total War's official response to the price controversy for the Warhammer DLC. Honestly, let it die. The series is beyond redemption at this point, and without it tanking into the ground, they won't learn their lesson. Eventually, a more passionate group of developers will make their own Total War type game and implement all the things the fans have wanted since Shogun 2. Throwing out an ultimatum and a threat to stop development and support on your product if you don't buy your DLC, always a great way to sell your game. And remember, this is definitely going to be a part of why the guy's panicking and making this video, because he wants the show to go on. He wants to be able to keep riding this wave. Like, he's on the Titanic, it's sinking. He wants to keep plugging the holes and keep the Titanic going for as long as possible. He wants the music to keep playing. Always a great way to sell your game. What could go wrong? At least EA had the balls to flat out say, don't buy our game then. CA can't even muster the courage to be straight up with their opinion. Creative Assembly is run by Sega, who know nothing about Total War, and the developers that made the good games left with Shogun 2, being done and even before that. I wish that they made up a new studio and started a similar game with similar skills and passion compared to the current staff at CA and Total War. 2013 to 2023, from Total War 2 to Warhammer 3, a decade of CA diligently showing us how to butcher one's own franchise, and no amount of pity will redeem the bots in the fandom who are still defending this shit show. A company that threatens they will literally stop doing their job. Yeah, exactly, this is another thing. He's saying, don't tell us to stop doing our job. They're threatening to stop doing their job. He wants to keep doing their job for them for free while they're threatening to stop doing their job, and he's the one that's panicking and fixing a product you paid for, because you won't cough up more money for them for DLC that is over half the price of the actual fucking game's original selling price. 150% increase. They say if you don't accept the price increase for DLC, this could potentially make them have to stop development on Warhammer 3 and even cancel full development of the Total War series. Are you serious? Are you seriously going to try and guilt trip your consumers and fans that you will lose your jobs and your franchise will cease to exist? If any of you are gullible enough to think that, it's true. Here's just a few basic facts about Creative Assembly. Estimated revenue and valuation. Creative Assembly's estimated annual revenue is currently $250 million a year. Their estimated revenue per employee is $305,000. Employee data, 800 employees. Grew their employees by 8% a year. Poor CA, having such hard times. However, will they survive? All the humanity. No, they're not going to go fucking under if you don't buy their DLC. They are a $100 million company with steady revenue. Of course, they're lying about increased costs. It's just pure corporate greed. Creative Assembly is 8% growth with $250 million revenue. Check page 18 of the accounts. Shows all the profits for the previous tax year. They made $7 million in profit. You're not buying their overpriced DLC is not going to make Total War stop development in Warhammer 3. They're lying, and it's emotional blackmail. And this seems highly credible to me. And I would just believe this if it weren't for the fact that I've also read they've got one person doing bug fixes. I think they might just keep making DLC while just not fixing any of the bugs. That's what I predict. They're going to keep making like 2 or 3 or 4 increasingly overpriced shitty DLCs, and they're going to just have almost nothing going in towards maintenance and fixing. Oh, and just the icing on the cake, no, they're not running out of money in June this year and 2023, because amongst their rising costs, the actual fucking UK government gave them extra funding to move on from their perks as a startup company, yeah. And then he quotes what the UK government said. The UK video game sector is booming and we're maximising its potential even further. Today we've announced 5 million extra funding for the UK Games Fund, which will help companies like CA Games go from start-up to scale-up. Creative Assembly was founded in 1987 and is the biggest game company in the UK. They're not a start-up. Absolutely scummy practices and borderline illegal. Meanwhile, No Man's Sky announced a new update recently after the already plethora of others before it, 7 years after the release. 7 years during which they never had to charge their customer a single cent for any of their product, their updates or events. I've said this before and I'll say it again, the last good Total War game Creative Assembly released was Attila. After that, its practices and development has gone downhill time and again. Fuck you Creative Assembly, fuck you Total War, don't buy their shit, don't accept their excuses, don't be threatened by their threats. I've decided indefinitely to never buy another Total War game again, purely based on the fact how they've handled Warhammer 3 with as much grace as a blind man with his arms switched around in an egg and spoon race. It's not acceptable, and you all should not be putting up with it anymore. I hope Total War Pharaoh sales plummet. Yes, that Bronze Age Troy reskinned game no one asked for, which launched teasers and trailers with Troy game assets in it, such as flags, hoping no one would notice. I wouldn't be surprised again if factions and features are behind another paywall. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if they made godly units because of all of the Egyptian gods too. I hope Warhammer 3 reviews keep getting worse, and I hope this is finally a fucking wake-up call to Creative Assembly and Total War that we're sick and tired of their bullshit. From terrible buggy releases to updating decade-old games like Shogun 2 and purposely removing features hoping fans don't notice. Some mods for Shogun 2 still to this day do not work or are a buggy mess because you moved the mods to your new Total War game launcher. Hence why I haven't uploaded Follow the Samurai in a while. Mods I like just don't work now, they just don't. Total War Syndrome 2 can be described as using a rotten corpse as a puppet that will sometimes accidentally do something interesting, like having a tooth fall out. There's no going back to quality games without a complete rebuild. I'm tired of it. The way you've handled this controversy in your whole series for the past 8 years since Attila is the catalyst that I shouldn't buy any of your games indefinitely. I saw it from a mile away. Your practices will get gradually worse with your Warhammer games, but fuck this price stuff with Warhammer 3. Why would anyone want to further buy or play anything from you ever again after this? And let's say it's true. Let's give Sia the benefit of the doubt that they truly need us to give them our money for this DLC. If they need to sell overpriced stuff to stay afloat, then they deserve to drown. This is just terrible financial management, and what gives a company the right to get away with it? While the looming recession and financial crises on the way, small businesses have to file for bankruptcy. It's not right, and their profits prove it's just not true at all. They're lying straight to your face. My eyebrow will raise if Medieval 3 gets announced, but with current Creative Assembly and Total War staff and how they've handled the past 8 years, especially Warhammer 3, I'm 99% sure they will ruin it. Well said. Well said. People need to remember this. They will honestly ruin Medieval 3 if they do it with current business practices and decisions. Don't be surprised if they cut off parts of Europe behind paywalls and factions at £15 each. Just play the mod Medieval Kingdoms 1212 AD mod for Attila, especially Medieval 3, infinitely better than anything the current CA and Total War could ever dream of producing. A mod with development and updates done by fans who actually care about what they're making. Only real way of enjoying the glory of Total War now is their older titles, which they put a lot more care, thought and love into, which they're now sadly removing content from with updates. Chat feature, gone. Modding, gone or updated to not work. Even on purposely changing game file names to mess with modders. A better part of a decade after its release, they rebranded Follow the Samurai as a Saga game and more than doubled its price. Seems even the older games aren't immune from some of the fuckery now. They've increased prices for all of their older titles. So if you want to experience their games that are far more polished and historically accurate and have better features, you now have to cough up more money for the agreed to. Also, I would add in here that Rome Remastered has been bundled along with the original Rome, and then it's been hiked up by 700%. You can no longer buy Rome Total War Vanilla for like £2 or £3. You have to spend like $20 or $30 for the remaster to get the original as well. That's the only way to get it. So it's very clear that the remaster was just an excuse to price hike a classic game that has a lot of players that play with mods to this day. Another example to add on to Pilps' excellent post. The only real way of capturing that same passion is through the potential in indie developers. I know Manor Lords is not 100% based on combat, but that game has so much more structure, love and care put into it compared to any Total War since Attila. I'm never buying another Total War title ever again, shameful display. And then the meme here, which perfectly sums up the situation. So well said Pilps, I couldn't agree more. And this was the perfect time to give credit, to put a spotlight on this post, especially with the contrast that is offered by the shills that are under the boot of CA and have their nose right up their arse, getting all covered in brown shit. This is perfect. Thanks, Pilps, for saying this. It's good to have everyone with a brain and a spine talking when you see stuff like this happening, because it puts even more pressure on the people that have decided to take the completely unprincipled position. And to make it interesting, I have a poll. And this is a poll that asks, how responsible are YouTube shillfluencers for the downfall of Total War? 1 entirely, all the blame at their feet, 7%. So this is people that really have a problem with the shill. 7%, 1 in 15, that's about 150 people. 2, mostly with other factors at play, 8%, so about 150 people again. But then by far, 67%, 2/3, so that's about 1,600 people, somewhat with other much bigger factors at play. So the majority of my audience puts some of the blame at the feet of the shills. The people that say there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, my subscribers think that's wrong. They assign blame, and of course it's easy to understand why they might if they've watched my video on the Shilling operation, where I actually explain how they're responsible for this, the part they play in this machinery, the cog that they represent in this mode of production of these games to get them to market and to sell them. I explain the responsibility they have, so I'm in line with the 67% here. So I'm sorry, but saying there's no ethical consumption under capitalism and then just whipping your slaves and exploiting your Jews that the state has given you permission to use as slaves to build rockets, or buying that stuff of kids that Vosh has defended in the past at some point, it doesn't cut it, and neither does using that to justify continuing to help a shy company huck off overpriced digital tat to people that quite often are vulnerable and unable to help themselves and are just going to buy it as soon as you do that. You have a responsibility not to do that, and I think the argument can easily be made to anyone that dares to suggest otherwise. Fucking reckless and stupid. Thanks for watching. If you're a fan of my work and would like to support me, then go over to my Patreon, where I do my best to give out perks, including monthly updates on what I've got planned and what I'm thinking. Special thanks to Matteo Olivetti, SJ Mage and Badr Nasser.